I never imagined I'd see the day when my own husband would betray me in the most unimaginable way. One ordinary Tuesday, I found a small envelope in his coat pocket. Just a piece of paper, really, but the words on it shattered my world. It wasn't just a note, it was a confession written in someone else's hand, addressed to him, filled with secrets that made my blood run cold. I didn't speak a word. I didn't even move. I just stood there, my heart pounding, knowing that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. Before we dive deeper into what happened, I want to say, if you're watching this, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And tell me in the comments where you're watching this story from. I want to see how far this tale of betrayal and revenge has traveled. The kitchen was quiet, almost eerily so, with only the soft hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. I sat at the marble counter, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold without me noticing. My mind replayed the countless moments I had spent trusting him, believing that our 40 years together meant something real. But now that fragile belief was crumbling. His name is Elias Hawthorne, a man who looked as ordinary as any other neighbor on our quiet Chicago street. But behind the polite smiles and casual greetings, he had a secret life, one I had never imagined. I had spent decades cooking his favorite meals, attending every work dinner with him, and supporting every business venture he pursued. And for what? I asked myself, voice silent in the empty kitchen. For him to betray me in such a cold, calculated way? A few days earlier, he had returned home late from a business meeting, wearing his tailored suit and that same faint cologne I thought I recognized. But now I knew there had been someone else, someone who was writing him letters, sending him gifts, making plans in the shadows while I trusted him completely. I tried to recall when I first noticed the signs. The late-night texts he always hit, the new perfume that clung faintly to his clothes, and the way he avoided my questions about his whereabouts. I had brushed them off, telling myself it was paranoia, that after 40 years of marriage, he deserved some freedom. But freedom doesn't come in the form of secret dinners, hidden addresses, and handwritten letters laced with intimate confessions. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I didn't want to call anyone, didn't want to involve the police yet. This was personal. This was mine. I opened the email account he always said he never used, and there it was, the message that confirmed my worst fears. A short line, sweet and taunting. Can't wait to see you tonight. Only us. No signature. No name. Just a promise that he was lying, deceiving, and betraying me. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. 40 years of memories flashed through my mind. Our wedding day, the birth of our children, late nights spent planning our future. And now they all felt like illusions, carefully constructed lies meant to blind me to the truth. I didn't want to panic. I didn't want to confront him yet. Instead, I moved with quiet precision. First, I collected every piece of evidence I could find. Receipts from dinners that weren't mentioned, perfume samples tucked into his briefcase, emails opened and screenshotted. Each one felt like a hammer hitting the fragile walls of my heart. Then came the plan. I had to be careful. He was clever, methodical, and meticulous. Any wrong move, and he would know I suspected him. I decided to hire someone discreet, a private investigator. Someone who could track his movements without raising suspicion. Mrs. Leland, an old friend of mine, recommended Harper Finch, a seasoned investigator with an impeccable reputation. I called her, voice trembling but determined. Mrs. Hawthorne, I understand, Harper said calmly after I explained everything. I'll take it from here. I'll document everything. You just need to stay calm and act normal. That night, after Elias went to bed, I sat in the kitchen, clutching my mug, pretending to read a book, but listening for every creak of the floorboards, every sound that would indicate he had slipped out. My mind raced with scenarios, each more horrifying than the last. Was he meeting her now? Was she waiting for him somewhere downtown? Each thought made my chest tighten, each one a reminder of how vulnerable trust makes you. By midnight, Harper's first message came through, a photo of Elias entering a boutique hotel downtown, holding the hand of a woman I had never seen before. The image froze me in place. The shock was so intense, it felt like my body refused to move. She wasn't just anyone. She was young, elegant, deliberate. The way they leaned toward each other, laughing softly, knowing they were hidden from the world, it made my blood boil. I knew then that I couldn't confront him directly. I had to be smarter, faster, and colder. I needed a plan that would expose the truth in a way that left no room for lies, no way for him to hide. Revenge wasn't just a thought, it became a pulse in my veins, driving every decision, every breath. The next morning, I went about my usual routine, preparing breakfast, watering the plants, and running through the motions of a life that now felt hollow. Elias greeted me with his usual smile, unaware that I already knew everything. "Good morning, my love," he said casually, sipping his coffee. I forced a polite smile back. "Morning," I replied, my voice calm, steady. But inside, a storm brewed, a calculated, patient storm waiting for the right moment to strike. I decided to leave for my business trip the next day. I told him I would be out for a meeting in downtown Chicago, pretending the reason was professional. He nodded, completely unaware that the meeting didn't exist. My plan was to watch, record, and expose, all while he believed he was hidden from view. Every detail, every movement, every whisper would be captured. And so, the stage was set. The curtain rose on a story of betrayal, deception, and meticulous revenge. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew it would hurt. But I also knew one thing: the truth had a way of coming out, and I would be ready when it did. The morning after I discovered Elias's betrayal, I left the house as if nothing had changed. The neighborhood seemed the same: kids playing on the sidewalks, neighbors waving politely, but I saw it all through different eyes now. Every familiar face felt like part of a facade, masking the normalcy that had lulled me into trust for decades. I checked into a small downtown hotel under a false name, careful to avoid the cameras I suspected might track me. Harper Finch, the private investigator I had hired, met me there within an hour, her professional calm a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. She handed me a folder with the first set of photos, each one more damning than the last. Elias, dressed in his usual crisp suit, holding the hand of a woman named Vivian Caro, who exuded charm and confidence, completely unaware of being photographed. Her laugh in one photo was bright, almost cruelly so, like she knew the extent of the deception she was part of. Harper explained that Vivian was in her early 30s, a consultant at a firm Elias had mentioned only vaguely in casual conversation. No one would have suspected her. "What's her angle?" I asked, my voice tight, trying to keep the trembling from showing. "She's calculating," Harper said, flipping through the photos. "And careful. But she's not as careful as she thinks. We'll follow every move until we have a complete record. I suggest you stay out of his sight for now. Any direct confrontation could ruin the trail." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. Relief that I wasn't powerless, frustration at how blind I had been for so many years. 40 years of marriage, and I had missed the signs until now. That evening, I couldn't sleep. The images replayed in my mind. Vivian's hand brushing Elias's, the subtle glances, the way he smiled, a smile I had never given him myself. I thought about confronting him, but I knew I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof that would not just break my heart, but expose him completely. Over the next week, Harper and I tracked Elias meticulously. Every lunch, every meeting, every supposed business trip was documented. It became apparent that his entire schedule was a lie. The dinners he claimed were work-related were often dates with Vivian. Emails he had dismissed as spam were confirmations of their secret rendezvous. Every moment I had trusted him, he had been weaving another story, another life that did not include me. Then, the real shock came. Harper handed me a document, her face grave. "You need to see this," she said softly. It was a property deed, signed just 3 months ago. Elias had quietly purchased a condo downtown under Vivian's name. The price was staggering, and the location confirmed everything I feared. Their secret meetings weren't just casual. They were planning a life together, one that intentionally erased me from his future. I felt my knees weaken, but I steadied myself against the counter. My heart pounded, but beneath the shock, a cold resolve began to form. He wasn't just cheating, he was preparing to abandon the life we built, and he thought I would never notice. I wasn't about to let that happen. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him directly. I needed a plan, one that would hit him where it hurt the most: his reputation, his pride, his carefully constructed life. I couldn't rely on anger or impulse. Every move had to be calculated, precise, and devastatingly effective. I began by reviewing every photo Harper had taken, noting times, locations, and possible witnesses. I mapped out their routine, the places they frequented, the restaurants, the boutiques, even the obscure little cafes where no one would recognize them. Each detail became a piece of a puzzle I intended to solve fully before the confrontation. Meanwhile, I also started digging into Vivian's background. Her social media profiles, professional history, and past affiliations revealed someone ambitious and unscrupulous, willing to manipulate situations for personal gain. I realized she wasn't just a mistress, she was a strategist, fully aware of the consequences of her involvement with a married man. The challenge ahead was even greater than I had anticipated. One evening, Harper called me urgently. "They're planning something big," she said. "I don't know what exactly, but I've tracked them to a luxury property where they're spending extended hours. I believe they're moving items, maybe preparing for a longer stay. This isn't casual anymore, it's deliberate." I clenched my fists, a mix of fury and determination surging through me. This was the point of no return. I had evidence, I had tracking, and most importantly, I had clarity. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt empowered. The following day, I went to a local print shop and had copies of the most incriminating documents made: photos, emails, receipts, the property deed. I labeled each with a date and time, creating a record that could not be disputed. The satisfaction of seeing the truth laid out in black and white was a strange, bitter comfort. That night, I returned to my hotel room, my mind racing. How would I reveal this? Should I leave it anonymously or confront them directly? Could I handle the confrontation without losing control? The questions tumbled endlessly, but one thought anchored me: nothing would be the same again, and I had to reclaim the life that had been stolen from me. As I lay in bed, I realized that the betrayal was not just about Elias's infidelity. It was about deception, manipulation, and the complete disregard for the life we had built together. I felt the weight of 40 years, but also the fierce determination to reclaim what was mine. And so, the game had begun. The first moves were carefully placed, the players identified, and the stakes set higher than ever. I knew the coming days would be tense, dangerous even, but I was ready. Betrayal had awakened a part of me that I had long forgotten, a relentless, calculating, and unstoppable force ready to exact justice. The storm was coming, and there would be no escaping it. The days following my discoveries felt like living in a parallel universe. Every moment was calculated, every word I spoke measured, and every move was designed to maintain my cover. I returned to my home, walking the familiar halls with a calmness I did not feel. Elias was there, oblivious to the fact that I now held the key to unraveling his entire secret life. I started small, observing him. Each interaction, each casual remark was a test. He had returned to his routines, confident that nothing had changed. His arrogance was staggering, almost laughable, if it weren't so infuriating. He talked about business trips, charity events, and old friends as if his actions over the last few months hadn't erased all the trust we once shared. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence. Harper had identified patterns in their movements, noting the days Vivian would visit the condo and the times Elias would slip away from home. We discovered that their relationship wasn't just secret, it was meticulously planned. They had schedules, coded messages, and even a shared account to handle expenses without drawing attention. Every layer I uncovered made my anger grow, but it also sharpened my focus. One evening, I received an anonymous tip from someone who worked in the downtown condo complex. A neighbor had noticed unusual activity, packages being delivered late at night, movers coming and going, and most importantly, Elias and Vivian leaving together in the early mornings. This tip confirmed our suspicions. They were planning something permanent. I knew it was time to step up. I called Harper, and together we devised a plan. It wasn't about immediate confrontation. It was about creating a situation where the truth would become undeniable. I wanted the evidence to speak louder than words, and for the consequences to be inescapable. Over the next few days, I began planting subtle questions during conversations with Elias, testing his reactions. He fumbled once, a slight hesitation, a flicker of guilt, or maybe it was fear. I noted every reaction, cataloging them alongside the photographs, emails, and financial documents. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about control, power, and exposing a life built on lies. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Harper discovered a series of reservations Elias and Vivian had made under false names, luxury retreats, fine dining experiences, and even private flight charters. One document, in particular, shocked me to my core: a reservation for a weekend getaway at an exclusive resort, listed under Vivian's alias, but paid entirely with joint assets Elias had never mentioned. "This is it," Harper said, handing me the file. "This weekend, everything comes together. If we move carefully, we can ensure they don't see it coming." I felt a surge of adrenaline. The evidence was overwhelming, and the timing perfect. I spent the next 2 nights planning meticulously, going over every possible scenario. How would Elias react? Could Vivian manipulate the situation? What if they suspected I knew more than I let on? Every question was a thread in the web I was weaving. Finally, the day arrived. Elias left for what he believed was a business trip, Vivian in tow. I stayed behind, preparing a confrontation that wasn't about shouting or tears. It was about revelation. Every document, every photograph, every financial record was arranged to tell the story of their betrayal with undeniable clarity. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of blood red and gold, I felt the tension in my chest. This was more than confrontation. It was the moment where hidden truths would surface, where lies would crumble, and where the life Elias thought he could continue in secrecy would be shattered. I heard the door click behind me, signaling their return. They entered, laughing, relaxed, unaware of the storm about to hit. I stayed calm, almost serene, as I invited them into the living room. Elias raised an eyebrow, sensing something off, but said nothing. Vivian's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of unease crossing her face. I gestured toward the table, where the evidence lay neatly arranged. "I think it's time you both see the full picture," I said softly, my voice steady, almost chilling in its calmness. Elias's eyes widened as he recognized the photographs, documents, and receipts. "Where? How?" he stammered. Vivian's hands trembled slightly as she took in the scene, the reality of their deception hitting like a physical blow. "This is everything," I said, pointing to the property deed, the emails, and the reservations. "Every lie, every hidden move, every secret meeting. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I would stay blind. But here it is, all laid out in black and white." For a moment, there was silence. The weight of the betrayal hung in the air, suffocating and electric. I saw fear in their eyes, not because of anger, but because the carefully constructed illusion they had built was now exposed. I continued, my voice cold and unwavering. "You planned a life without me, assuming I'd never see it coming. But you underestimated me. Betrayal has a way of awakening truths in the betrayed, truths that can't be ignored, manipulated, or silenced." Vivian tried to speak, to defend herself, but the words faltered in her throat. Elias's hands shook as he reached for the documents, as if he could erase the evidence with a mere touch. But I stayed calm, letting the silence and the undeniable proof do all the work. This was only the beginning. The first wave of revelation had struck, but the consequences were far from over. Elias and Vivian had no idea what I was capable of when pushed beyond the limits of trust, love, and patience. The game had changed. The tables were turning. and I was ready to see it through to the very end. The room felt smaller than ever, every shadow a reminder of secrets now laid bare. Elias's usual confident posture had crumbled, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes darted nervously between me and the evidence spread across the table. Vivian, once composed and smiling, now looked like a trapped animal, her lips pressed tightly together, fingers twisting in a silent panic. I sat back in my chair, maintaining the calmness that concealed the storm raging inside me. "I see you didn't expect this," I said softly, almost conversational, though each word carried the weight of betrayal. "You thought the walls you built around your lies were impenetrable. You thought I would remain blind, ignorant, compliant." Elias tried to speak, his voice shaking slightly. It's not what it looks like." "Oh, but it is," I interrupted, holding up the reservation receipts, emails, and photographs. Every secret meeting, every financial transaction, every innocent trip, it's all here. Every move meticulously planned, yet utterly transparent to anyone willing to look closely. Vivian's face paled. Her confidence had dissolved completely. She tried to reach for one of the documents, perhaps to destroy them or plead, but I gently moved my hand to stop her. "Don't touch anything. This isn't a negotiation. It's a revelation. And it's one you cannot escape." Elias sank into the sofa, his fingers pressed against his temples, muttering under his breath. We never meant for it to go this far." I let the silence linger, thick and suffocating. Then I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "You always think the truth can be hidden forever. But lies have a way of demanding recognition, and today, you're forced to face them." Vivian's hands shook as she whispered, "Please, we can explain." I didn't respond immediately. I let the room absorb the tension, the weight of betrayal settling like dust over every corner. I could see the fear in their eyes, the panic slowly creeping in. The facade they had presented to the world, to me, had crumbled entirely. Then I began revealing more evidence, bank statements showing how joint assets were secretly diverted, emails discussing clandestine plans, and photographs from the condo and trips they thought were unnoticed. Each item struck harder than the last, and with every revelation, their composed exteriors eroded further. Elias looked up at me, eyes wide and haunted. How did you find all this?" I smiled faintly, a calm yet terrifying expression. Observation, patience, and a refusal to accept things at face value. "You underestimated me, Elias. You always did." Vivian finally broke, her voice cracking. We thought you'd never know. We thought we could keep this hidden." "Yes," I said, letting my voice drip with controlled intensity. "And now you see what happens when underestimation meets vigilance. Your lies are not just exposed, they are rendered powerless." I paused, letting the words sink. "You built a life on deception, thinking it could coexist with ours. But betrayal is not a partnership, it's a weapon. And right now, that weapon has turned back on you." Elias's hands shook violently as he attempted to gather the scattered papers, but I gently stopped him again. "No, this isn't about anger or revenge. Not yet. It's about reality. The reality you can no longer ignore." Vivian's breathing was ragged now. "Please, there must be some way to fix this." I shook my head slowly. "No. Fixing this would require undoing the truth, erasing the evidence, and altering reality itself. And that, unfortunately for you, is impossible." I stood, moving to the window to let the dying sunlight filter into the room. "You see, I gave you time, opportunity after opportunity to remain honest. But you chose deceit. You chose betrayal. And now you must live with the consequences of those choices." Elias's face twisted with anger and fear. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." I turned sharply, my expression calm, but my eyes burning with resolve. "It is over, Elias. For your lies, for your betrayals, it is over. And I will ensure that every action you've taken in secret is known, undeniable, and irreversible." Vivian collapsed into the sofa, sobbing quietly. Elias stood frozen, his mind racing, realizing that every carefully crafted plan, every hidden truth, had now been exposed to light. The tables had turned, and for the first time, they were powerless. The room was silent except for Vivian's soft crying and Elias's heavy breathing. The moment of confrontation had passed, but the aftermath had just begun. What would follow was a reckoning neither of them could escape, a reckoning fueled not by emotion, but by undeniable proof, meticulously collected and patiently revealed. As I watched them, I felt a strange calmness. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, exposure, and taking control of a life that had been manipulated by deception for far too long. The storm was not yet over, but now Elias and Vivian knew the rules had changed, and the consequences awaiting them were far beyond what either could imagine. The following morning, the house felt different. Every corner, every room seemed to hum with an unspoken tension. Elias and Vivian moved cautiously, like predators whose prey had suddenly turned the tables. But this was not about hunting or evasion anymore. It was about reckoning. I observed quietly from the doorway, unnoticed. They whispered to each other, plotting, their words sharp but shaky. It was clear they hadn't recovered from the blow of yesterday. Their once confident alliance had crumbled under the weight of exposure, leaving only panic and desperation. Elias's voice was low, almost a growl. "We can't let this continue. If she exposes everything, we lose everything. We have to do something." Vivian shook her head, fear lacing her voice. "Do what, Elias? Everything is out in the open. Every secret, every lie. She knows it all. There's no way to undo it." Elias's jaw tightened. "There's always a way. We just need leverage. Something to shift the balance back in our favor." I leaned against the frame silently, letting them speak. Let them reveal their next move. Their desperation was palpable. It hung in the air like a storm about to break. Vivian took a shaky breath. "Leverage? We have nothing left, except maybe we can try to threaten." Her voice faltered as she looked at Elias, uncertain. Elias's eyes glinted with a mixture of fear and determination. Yes, a threat. Something to scare her, to make her hesitate. If we can make her doubt, even for a moment, we might regain control. I stepped forward, making my presence known. The moment they saw me, their expression shifted from plotting predators to guilty children caught in the act. "You think threats can undo truth?" I asked softly, almost rhetorically, my voice calm but edged with steel. "You think fear can erase betrayal?" Vivian swallowed hard, unable to speak. Elias's hands twitched, and he took a step back, uncertain. I continued, pacing slowly in front of them. "Yesterday was a revelation. Today is a reckoning. And tomorrow will be the moment when all consequences become undeniable." Elias's voice cracked. You don't understand. We didn't mean. It wasn't supposed to go this far." I stopped, fixing him with a gaze so steady it made him flinch. Intentions don't erase actions. Plans don't erase outcomes. You built this life on deception, thinking no one would notice. But here we are. And nothing you do now can change that reality. Vivian's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, clutching her hands together. "Please, there must be something we can do. Something." I crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "There is one thing you can do. Accept what has been exposed and face it honestly. Anything else is just prolonging your suffering." Elias's shoulders sagged, the last remnants of his bravado disappearing. You can't. We can't. You can't ruin everything. You can't." I tilted my head slightly, a subtle but icy smile forming. "I already have Elias. Everything you built, everything you hid, everything you thought safe, it's already undone. And every attempt to reclaim it will only confirm what you already fear, that your lies have no power here." The room fell silent, save for the soft creak of the floorboards under Vivian's trembling frame. Their alliance, once unbreakable in its deceit, had now fractured beyond repair. They weren't just partners in crime, they were now two terrified individuals staring at the consequences of every hidden choice they had made. I could see it in their eyes: panic, despair, and the dawning realization that nothing, absolutely nothing, could save them from the truth now. And as I stepped closer, letting the weight of that truth settle in, I knew this was only the beginning. The next phase of reckoning would come, and when it did, Elias and Vivian would realize the full extent of their vulnerability. They had underestimated me once, but they would never make that mistake again. The night had fallen like a velvet shroud, but inside the house, darkness wasn't the only thing looming. Every shadow seemed alive. Every corner whispered the truth they had tried so desperately to bury. Elias paced the living room, his hands running through his hair as though the mere act of touching it could erase his guilt. Vivian sat on the edge of the sofa, her eyes hollow, hands clutching a cushion as if it could shield her from reality. I watched silently, letting the tension swell. The truth had become a living thing between us, palpable, suffocating, undeniable. They didn't know I had uncovered everything, every secret, every manipulation, every betrayal. And soon, they would realize there was no escape. Elias's voice broke the silence. We need to control this. We can't let it spread. If the truth gets out, his words trailed off as fear overtook him. Vivian whispered, almost to herself, we can fix it, can't we? There has to be a way. I stepped into the room, letting my presence fill the space. Fix it? Do you honestly think the past can be fixed with more lies? Elias froze, eyes darting toward me. Who told you? I smiled faintly, almost pityingly. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I observed, I listened. I understood. And now you're powerless to stop the truth from unraveling. Vivian's lips quivered. You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to go this far. We were careful. Careful. I repeated, my voice sharp, cutting through the tension. You called yourselves careful, but look at you now. Shattered. Panicked. Reduced to this. Elias ran a hand down his face. We can make it right. I swear, if we can just explain, maybe she'll. Explain? I interrupted, stepping closer. Explain your lies, your manipulations, your betrayals? Do you think explanations erase the pain you caused? The trust you destroyed? Vivian buried her face in her hands. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. We just wanted. We just. You wanted control, I finished for her. You wanted power. You wanted to dictate what everyone knew, what everyone believed. And now that control is gone. All of it. Gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Their breaths came in shallow gasps, the weight of reality pressing down on them like a physical force. I could see the cracks forming in their composure, tiny fissures that promised collapse. I paced slowly around them, letting my words sink in. The more you struggle, the more the truth solidifies. Every desperate plan you hatch, every fearful whisper, every attempt to manipulate, it only confirms what I already know. You are trapped in the web you wove. Elias sank into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. Vivian remained on the sofa, trembling, staring at the floor as if answers could be etched there. You think you can undo this? I asked softly, almost mockingly. You can't. Every secret, every hidden agenda, every betrayal, it's all coming to light. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that can stop it now. Vivian looked up, eyes wide and desperate. Please, there must be something. There has to be a way. I leaned down, my voice calm but lethal. There is only one way now, truth. Acceptance. Facing what you've done. Anything else is just prolonging your inevitable collapse. The room fell silent again. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but inside, the storm was already raging. Secrets that had been carefully guarded for years were unraveling, and with each passing second, Elias and Vivian realized that the life they thought was secure was nothing more than a fragile illusion. And as I watched them, panic-stricken and powerless, I knew that the most shocking revelations were yet to come. They had underestimated me, underestimated the power of truth, and soon they would pay the price for every deceit, every betrayal, every hidden agenda. The next morning arrived, but it brought no relief, only the cold, merciless weight of truth pressing down on us all. The sun rose over the city, indifferent to the turmoil inside the walls of that house. Elias sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee he didn't intend to drink. Vivian paced restlessly, hands wringing, eyes darting as if expecting the walls themselves to betray them. I followed their every movement silently, letting them stew in their panic. They had underestimated the damage of secrets, the power of revelation, the inevitability of consequences. And now there was no turning back. Elias. Vivian's voice trembled. We need a plan. We can fix this, I know it. I looked at him, noting the hesitation, the fear that finally settled into the lines of his face. Fix this, I said, letting the words hang. After years of lies? After every betrayal you thought would remain hidden? Elias swallowed hard, eyes glinting with desperation. We can control it. Just stay calm, think. There's a way. Control it. I echoed, my voice cutting through the tension. Control is gone. Gone the moment you thought you could manipulate everything and everyone. You can't manipulate truth. You can't manipulate consequences. You can only face them or be crushed by them. Vivian sank onto the sofa, hands covering her face. We didn't mean for this. Anyone to get hurt. Didn't mean. I laughed softly, bitterly. Do you think didn't mean erases the years of deceit? The lies whispered in trust, the betrayal dressed as love and loyalty? Words don't undo actions, Vivian. They never have. Elias ran a hand through his hair, leaning heavily on the table. We can make amends. If we show them proof. I shook my head slowly. Proof? There is nothing to prove to erase what you've done. Every effort to justify yourself only deepens the wound. You've built a house of lies, and it's collapsing. The only thing left is to watch it crumble. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know if I can survive this. Everything is falling apart. I stepped closer, letting my presence fill the room. Good. You need to understand what it feels like to be powerless. To realize that every manipulation has consequences. Every secret has weight. Every betrayal has a price. And now, you're paying it. Elias's jaw tightened. You're going to expose everything, aren't you? I've already seen it, I replied quietly, almost gently. Every hidden text, every whispered lie, every calculated betrayal. I know the full story. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Not now, not ever. The air between us thickened, charged with inevitability. The house felt smaller, suffocating, as if it, too, recognized that the truth could no longer be contained. They were trapped not by walls, not by circumstances, but by the consequences of their own actions. Vivian's eyes met mine, shimmering with tears. Please, don't ruin everything. There must be another way. There is no other way, I said firmly. Only truth remains. Only facing what you've done. Anything else is just another lie, another chain that binds you. And these chains? They're unbreakable now. Elias slumped in his chair, silent. Vivian curled into herself, the weight of inevitability pressing down. And in that moment, I realized the power of truth, how it shapes reality, how it exposes the smallest fractures in even the strongest facades. They had underestimated me, underestimated the truth, underestimated the consequences. And soon, everything they had built on deception, manipulation, and control would collapse in a way they could never have imagined. Outside, the city went on oblivious. But inside, time seemed to stretch, every second heavier than the last, every heartbeat echoing the unrelenting march toward exposure. This was the breaking point. The moment where lies and secrets could no longer protect them. And the moment when the truth, merciless and absolute, would finally demand its due. By the evening, the atmosphere in the house had turned almost unbearable. Every corner seemed charged, every shadow a silent witness to the impending disaster. Vivian and Elias no longer spoke freely. Their words were measured, cautious, as if speaking too much could trigger the collapse they had been dreading. I moved quietly through the house, observing them from a distance. The facade of control they had so carefully maintained was crumbling, revealing raw fear and desperation underneath. The lies that had protected them for years were now nothing but brittle walls, ready to shatter. Suddenly, Vivian's phone buzzed. She jumped slightly, glancing at the screen with a mixture of hope and terror. It's from the office. They found something. Her voice was barely audible, trembling with panic. Elias leaned over her shoulder, trying to read the message. What, what did they find? He asked, his voice tight, almost pleading. Vivian's fingers shook as she scrolled through the messages. Financial records, transactions, everything we tried to hide. Her voice cracked. They know everything. I felt a quiet satisfaction. The truth was no longer hidden. It was breaking through the cracks, exposing every betrayal. The house that had once been their sanctuary was now a cage, filled with fear and regret. Elias ran his hands through his hair, pacing frantically. No, this can't be happening. We can fix this. There has to be a way. I shook my head slowly. Fix this? You've already lost. Every attempt to cover up, every manipulation, every lie has led you here. There is no fix. Only consequences. Only exposure. Only the truth coming for you like a storm you can't outrun. Vivian sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. I didn't think it would ever come to this. I didn't think anyone would find out. You thought wrong, I said softly, almost pityingly. You underestimated the reach of truth. You underestimated the impact of betrayal. And now, you will experience the full weight of your actions. The phone buzzed again. Another message. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. I watched as Vivian and Elias read the words, their faces paling, their hands trembling. Elias collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. We're done. Everything is over. Vivian looked up, tears streaming down her face. How did it all come to this? I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. It came to this because you lied. Because you betrayed trust. Because you thought you could manipulate everything and everyone without consequence. The universe has a way of balancing itself, and now, balance is demanding its due. The house felt smaller, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Every sound, every creak, every shadow seemed to amplify the tension, making the fear almost tangible. And then a knock at the door. Vivian froze, her eyes wide with terror. Elias slowly turned toward the sound, his body stiff, every muscle tense. Who is it? He whispered. I didn't answer. I simply watched as they approached the door, dread written across every line of their faces. Vivian hesitated, then slowly opened it. A figure stood there, calm, composed, yet with an undeniable air of authority. The kind of presence that immediately commanded attention, that made it clear they were not to be trifled with. The figure stepped inside, eyes sweeping over the room, taking in the fear, the desperation, the unraveling of carefully constructed lies. You've been very busy, the figure said, voice smooth, but carrying an edge of warning. Too busy hiding the truth to realize that it always finds its way out. Vivian and Elias exchanged a panicked glance, the reality finally sinking in. They were cornered, trapped, exposed. I smiled faintly, watching the final act of their carefully orchestrated deception begin to unfold. The reckoning they had tried to avoid for so long was here, and there was no escape. The walls of their world, built on lies and manipulation, were finally collapsing. And the truth, merciless and relentless, was ready to take its claim. The room was thick with tension, every breath feeling heavier than the last. Vivian and Elias stood frozen, the presence of the figure sending shivers down their spines. They had tried to hide their misdeeds for years, thinking themselves untouchable, but now, every lie, every betrayal was laid bare. The figure, tall and composed, took a deliberate step forward. Vivian, Elias, your time has run out. The games, the lies, the manipulations, they're over. Vivian's voice was shaky. Please, we can explain. We can make it right. Elias grabbed her hand, desperation in his eyes. We didn't mean for it to go this far. The figure shook their head, a faint, almost sorrowful smile playing on their lips. Intentions don't erase actions. You've crossed lines you cannot uncross. And now you must face the consequences. I stood in the background, watching them crumble under the weight of the truth. Years of deception, carefully hidden secrets, and manipulative schemes, all collapsing like a house of cards in an instant. Vivian sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. How? How did it all come to this? You built this yourself, the figure replied, their voice calm but firm. Every choice, every betrayal, it led to this moment. And now, you cannot run. Suddenly, the door to the study burst open. A team of auditors, investigators, and law enforcement officers flooded in. Papers, files, and evidence were brought forward, proof of every fraudulent deal, every hidden account, every manipulation they had thought was safe. Elias stumbled back, his face pale. No, this can't be real. Vivian tried to shield herself, but it was futile. The truth was everywhere, undeniable and relentless. We can fight this. We can. The figure stepped closer, their eyes piercing. There is no fight left. There is only accountability. As the investigators began documenting everything, Vivian and Elias realized the full magnitude of their actions. Friends, business partners, and even family who had trusted them were now aware of the betrayal. Every carefully constructed facade was demolished. I watched in silence, a mix of satisfaction and pity swelling inside me. They had believed themselves clever, untouchable, but now they were exposed, vulnerable, and utterly powerless. The figure turned to me for a moment, their expression acknowledging the role I had played in bringing this reckoning to light. Then, without another word, they returned to ensuring Vivian and Elias faced the consequences they had long deserved. Hours passed. The house, once a symbol of control and power, now felt hollow, haunted by the ghosts of lies and deception. Vivian and Elias were led away, the weight of their actions finally settling in as reality crashed down upon them. I remained behind, surveying the remnants of their carefully constructed world. What had once been opulent and pristine was now tainted by the truth. Every corner, every shadow, every artifact of their lives now served as a reminder. Deception might shield you temporarily, but it cannot withstand the power of the truth. As I stepped outside, the night air felt cool and cleansing. The storm had passed, but its lessons lingered, sharp and unforgiving. Vivian and Elias would never forget this day, nor the price of their betrayal. And for those of us who witnessed it, the message was clear. Truth is a force that cannot be contained, and justice, however delayed, is inevitable. The days that followed were a whirlwind of revelations, apologies, and quiet reckonings. Vivian and Elias were no longer the figures of power and control they had once been. Headlines splashed their misdeeds across newspapers and social media, exposing them to the world. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal was laid bare, and the world watched as their empire crumbled. In the aftermath, the house they had once filled with laughter, ambition, and manipulation felt eerily silent. The grand halls, once bustling with schemes and whispered conspiracies, now stood empty, cold, and uninviting. It was as if the very walls mourned the downfall of their masters. I found myself walking through those halls one last time, reflecting on the journey that had led us here. It wasn't just about exposing Vivian and Elias. It was about justice, about ensuring that those who manipulate and deceive cannot escape the consequences forever. Neighbors, friends, and colleagues who had once turned a blind eye to their cruelty began speaking out. Stories emerged of subtle manipulations, stolen opportunities, and silent betrayals that had haunted so many for years. Each voice added weight to the accountability that Vivian and Elias now faced. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of peace. The truth had a way of setting things right, even if the process was messy, painful, and long overdue. People who had suffered in silence now found their voices, and for the first time in years, the balance of justice seemed restored. Meanwhile, Vivian and Elias adjusted to their new reality. The arrogance that once defined them was replaced with a hollow acceptance. There were no grand gestures of repentance, no dramatic pleas for forgiveness, just the quiet, inevitable acknowledgement of the consequences of their actions. I had learned something valuable too. Life doesn't always offer clear resolutions or poetic justice, but it does offer moments of clarity, moments where truth pierces through the chaos. And sometimes, the most profound victories are not loud or public. They are the quiet satisfaction of knowing that right has been restored and lessons have been learned. Months later, the house was sold, its new owners unaware of the shadows that once lingered within. The streets where Vivian and Elias had ruled their small empire returned to their normal rhythm. Life, in its relentless way, moved forward. And yet, the memory of the reckoning remained. It served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that no matter how clever or powerful one might feel, actions have consequences. Secrets have a way of surfacing, and truth has a way of prevailing, even when hope seems lost. As for me, I carried on, quietly observing, quietly ensuring that justice had its moment. The world is full of Vivians and Eliases, people who believe they are untouchable. But the story we lived through proves one thing: deception may provide temporary cover, but accountability is inevitable, and it always finds its way. The final lesson was clear: live with honesty, act with integrity, and treat others with respect. For those who fail to do so, the world has a way of catching up, delivering consequences that are long overdue. Walking away from the remnants of that chapter, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The storm had passed, the reckoning had come, and in its wake, there was hope, not just for justice, but for the enduring truth that no one is above it. Some stories end with fanfare, others fade quietly. This one ended with clarity, with truth, with resolution. And as I stepped into the sunlight of a new day, I knew that the lessons of this journey would remain, guiding us all toward a future where honesty and accountability reign supreme. Walking away from the remnants of that chapter, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The storm had passed, the reckoning had come, and in its wake, there was hope, not just for justice, but for the enduring truth that no one is above it. Before I go, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Have you ever faced someone who thought they were untouchable? Share your story in the comments. I read every one of them. And if this journey shocked you or made you think twice about trust and deception, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next story that could change how you see the world. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and together we can explore more truths, more secrets, and more lessons that life doesn't always make easy. Thank you for being part of this journey.